Hi everyone, what I wanted to do today in this video is talk about and do kind of a knife buying guide, and it's under the viewpoint of EDC to knife collecting. So it's a lot of the criteria that you've heard before, but I'm trying to summarize it, and I'm not going to talk about any specific knife, but things that I look at when I'm buying a knife. And probably 90% of the knives that I buy are off the internet, and the other ones are, I do have an opportunity to play with in person, etc. So it makes it tough in a lot of these points that I'm going to bring up, but you can always send things back usually, trade them out, sell them, whatever. So what I look for in buying a knife, and this applies to low-end knives, to more expensive knives, and I'll say that I have a list of about 9 to 10 things, and it's not, I don't look at any single point necessarily to say that I will or won't buy a knife. It's typically a combination of things, right? So if I don't get what I want and, on 3 different points, then I may not buy the knife, for example. So first, if you have the ability to inspect the knife that you're going to get, one of the things that I always look at is blade wiggle. So how secure is the blade itself? So this is one I have that it's a Benchmade, and this one you can, see if I can get it in focus, the blade will wiggle. So there's a bit of blade play here. And what that means is the pivot is not completely tightened down in this case. In this case, this is just kind of a Torx wrench to tighten this up. This one comes loose on me, so I need some Loctite on it. So a little bit of wiggle on this one. I still bought it, or I have it anyways. I still, retain it. So that's one kind of negative factor about this knife. So what you want is a knife that has no wiggle. It feels solid. It feels, strong lockup. And I'm gonna just default to this one a lot in the video here, but the Sebenza, everyone's kind of seen these, but there's no blade play with this at all. It's just solid. Completely firm, no movement. Most of your high-end knives will have this. They should have this. Over time they can come loose. You may have to maintain them or send them in, but it's relatively easy to do with this one at least. Okay, so that was blade wiggle. The next one on my list would be blade centering within the scale. So I'm going to go back to this nitrous striker here. Hopefully we can see, but you can see that this one, the blade is kind of far against the right side here. It's not an even alignment. It's close to rubbing the steel within there, but it doesn't, so it's not a huge deal. And again, it's a mixture of the same problem, that the pivot is not tight on this one. So what you want to look for again is a perfectly aligned blade within the scale, within the handle. I'll give you another example here. Here's a Griptilian. It's perfectly aligned. So this is a, for that characteristic, it's a good knife. What other ones do I have? Here's a Leatherman, an inexpensive knife. You can see the blade is not perfectly centered. And again, the Sebenza is a perfect alignment. And this is not a video on how great the Sebenza is. It's just, there are other knives out there that are like that too. The Striders, I have multiple Striders. and might be a little hard to see here, but they are aligned. They're not rubbing at all. Perception wise for these, the G10 slab is obviously more thick on this side, just a single flat slab of titanium. Perception, I see the blades on the Striders being not perfectly always centered, but I think that's by design on the Striders. So that's something to note with them. Well, okay, so that's blade centering. Next up is kind of an even sharpness, or how sharp is the knife. And this is, you know, hard to check and everything. You need to be careful. But looking at this paramilitary here, you know, you want to look for, do a visual inspection. I can't show it on the camera here, but a visual inspection of the knife within the blade. Hold it up close towards the light. Is there any shiny parts on the sharpened edge? That will kind of show if there's any kind of I guess non-uniformity, if that's a phrase. So obviously in the light here this is shiny, but any more shiny parts when looking dead on at the blade, that kind of shows roughness, unsharpened areas. You can do kind of a finger check real carefully. I'm not encouraging anyone to touch their blades, but if you're careful you can kind of look at it. You can always do a paper cut test, that kind of stuff. Not that that proves everything, but you know, one component of it. And most all my knives are pretty sharp here. The big flag is, most of the time you are going to get a sharp knife. I've had, if you're a subscriber to my videos and watched a lot of them, you'll note that I've had many problems with the Benchmades and their overall out-of-the-box sharpness. So honestly, I'll go back to the paper cut test. If it doesn't cut paper evenly with light pressure, then it may not be a great out-of-the-box sharp knife. Even on one of them I bought, you could do a finger test and just kind of touch the blade and you could tell. I mean, you could run your hand across the blade and there was no cuts or anything at all. So think about that, the overall sharpness. Another thing that I look at is, depending on what type of lock, you know, there's the Benchmade access locks, there's the unique paramilitary compression lock, there's the lock back knives, and then there's the frame locks that are on the Striders and the Sabenza, for example. What you want to look at is how much play or how pushed over those locks are, in at least in the frame locks and the liner locks. And let me see if I can find one here. So there's this Kershaw Blur in black here, but it's about in the midway point. You're looking at the liner here, and what you really want it to be in this, probably in this first half area of the blade, preferably sometimes a fourth of this size of the blade. You want it over on the left side. The further the right kind of signifies it could slip, maybe not have a great quality issue there. Hopefully that's understandable to most people. You can see the frame lock ones, they're a little thicker, and it's kind of right in the middle with this Sabenza. So that was a good example. I'll show you a Strider here. That one is a little before the half point, maybe almost at the half point. So this is also a good one. I'll show you a bad one. Just going back to this Leatherman cheap one, or inexpensive. You can see that the liner lock is pushed all the way almost to the 80%, definitely past the 3/4 mark from the left side. So there's a concern of quality or slippage there. The same issue goes with how big the liner is. So the liner on this one is relatively thin. That could signify less durability, more prone to slipping, whereas you see on the frame lock ones, they're much bigger in size. Next up, the blade retention. So the last thing you want is a blade coming open in your pocket or in a backpack or something.